Mrs. Lamondo, and I'm back to read you Clean Getaway. We are at Route 12, Off the Grid. By this time, just after a few minutes, Scoop can't take it anymore. Gima, was this house on wheels made in Tennessee? He says without looking in her direction. She turns the radio down. What's that? I noticed we have a Tennessee tag, he continues, so I was wondering if the Winnebago company is based in Tennessee or something. He faces his window and clenches his jaw. Not the least bit smooth, but Gima doesn't reply. Now what's he supposed to say? His eyes shift and latch onto the powered down cell. Mind if I use your phone? Depends on who you want to call, she winks. She probably shouldn't call Dad then. She'll be able to see it on the call log. You might get mad or something. So of course we have a whoopsie visitor. Say hello. All right. Who knows what she'll do then? Just want to holler at Shanice, see what she's up to. Shanice, huh? Yeah. No response. I kind of miss her, he adds, upping the mushy factor. Grandmas can't resist that, right? She pulls her focus from the road to look at him suspiciously. Then she smiles. That'll be fine. With a relief tingling at his fingertips, Scoop grabs the thing and unbuckles the seatbelt. Where you going, she says. Oh, I could use a little privacy if you don't mind. She shakes her head, which makes Scoop feel like a helium balloon is expanding in his throat. He knows if he tries to respond, either his voice will crack or it'll come out as a squeak. No can do, kiddo. Not safe for you to walk around back there while we're in motion. You want to call Shanice, you gotta do it right where you're sitting with your seatbelt fastened. Oh. Scoop could bring up all the times he's already walked around back there while they're in motion. He very specifically recalls being asked to grab a grandma protein shake not too long after their journey began, but he doesn't want to push it. Guess he won't be telling Shanice about everything going on and how weird and uncomfortable it makes him feel, but he certainly can't not make the phone call now. He makes sure the ringer switch on the side is set to silent before hitting the power button. Doesn't want her snatching it from his hand if the message notifications happens to chime. And it's a good thing he does because there are 3 new voicemails, all from Dad. Scoop knows it's a risk, but instead of actually calling Shanice, he makes a show of dialing the number in case Gima is sneaking glances in his direction, then taps the switch over to listen to the voicemails instead. He puts the phone to his ear and smiles at Gima, feeling guilty as sin, as she would say. Then Dad's voice comes pouring out over the loudspeaker. Mama, I don't know where you and William are or why you're not answering my calls or if you even still have this phone, but I need you to call me back immediately. Some authorities came by here and they're saying you. Mama, I need you to call me back. Now, please. Click. For a second, Scoop sits frozen. The phone attached to his face is as if glued there. He blinks and blinks. You all right over there, Jimmy? Comes Jima's voice, slicing through the block of ice Scoop feels trapped in. Yeah, Shanice isn't answering. I'm going to leave a But he catches himself before he says voicemail because it might tip her off. He quickly puts the phone down and taps to delete the message he just listened to. I'll try her again later, he says. Alrighty, and I'm William, Gima. Sure are, Gima replies, and she holds out her hand for the phone. Scoop takes what he hopes is not an obvious deep breath. He knows what he needs to do, and it's now or never. You mind if I call my dad too, Gima? I'd like to check in with him. Make sure he's doing okay at home without me and all. Maybe later, she says. You know how he is. Can't have him spoiling our good time, can we? Scoop grips the phone a little tighter. Guess not. Hand it over. Except now he's got a real problem. Because if she were to check the call log right, it would be clear that Scoop lied to her. He never actually called Shanice. So as much as he wants to leave it on so he can snatch it up and answer the next time Dad calls, why isn't he calling now? Scoop shuts the thing off, and he lays it against her outstretched palm. When she pushes the button that usually makes the screen light up and nothing happens, her eyes narrow the teeniest. You turned it off? Scoop can hardly breathe now. Yeah, it was off when I picked it up, so I figured he doesn't have a clue on how to finish that sentence. Which turns out to be fine. After a second, Gima nods. Good, she says. She drops the phone into the small storage space on the driver's side door where Scoop can't reach it. You and I are going off the grid. Route 13, a bad omen. So a bad omen is kind of like when you know something bad is about to happen. Scoop spends the next hour and a half doodling in the margins of his map while Jima's favorite band, Earth, Wind, and Fire, croons to them into the unknown, for Scoop at least. Then Jima signals the exit to the interstate again. One more drive-by pit stop, then off to Vicksburg for refreshments, she says. Scoop just sighs and puts a little star over Vicksburg as they ease to a stop at the top of the exit ramp. This time I think I'll tell you where we're headed, she continues, lowering the volume of Boogie Wonderland. That song always makes him think of penguins. The wildly cold weather creatures sang and danced to it in one of Scoob's favorite movies. I don't think we'll get out once we get there because we need to mosey on, G-Ma continues. But I know if we drove through Jackson without me finally seeing this place, I'd regret it forever. Is that where we are? Scoob replies, spotting it on his map. Good old Jackson, Mississippi. Your G-Pop and I attempted to take this detour 51 gosh darn years ago. Can you believe it? Scoob can't, but he doesn't say so. There was a man back then, Medgar Wiley Evers, fought this country in World War II, then came home to fight for Negro rights. Real good fella, she says. Now, I'll be honest with you, Scooby-Doob. Your old G-Ma had her head in the clouds when your G-Pop and I attempted this trip. We began our courtship in 1961, but we're together 6 years before we tied the knot because it wasn't legal for whites and blacks to marry until 67. There was a couple in Virginia who'd been convicted of a crime for marrying, and your G-Pop wasn't willing to make the risk of marrying in secret, she says. But when the Supreme Court overturned those dumb laws across the nation, don't think I'd ever been so happy. Scoob grins. Not everyone was, though. She hangs right into a neighborhood and then follows a short curve around the street on the left. Your G-Pop and I tied the knot at the courthouse. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum, but racial tensions were high. And she stops. Driving and talking. Scoob follows her gaze to the house across the street. Parts of it are painted a blinding turquoise color. There's a plaque on the brick part, but he can't see from the distance. It looks like there's a plaque in the front yard. G-Ma hasn't said a word or moved. She's just staring. That's when Scoob notices something off about the structure itself. He looks at the house next door, and then at the one whose curb they're idling beside. It hits him. There's no front door, he says. Entrance is in the carport, G-Ma murmurs without pulling her eyes away. Oh, weird. Had it built that way because they thought it'd be safer, she says. Who thought it'd be safer? Safer for what? Safer for the family, she says. This was Medgar Evers' home, Scooby-Doob, the man I mentioned. Okay, says Scoob. Is he supposed to say more? I can't believe. Scoob waits for her to go on. I don't know what to say, she says. Apparently Scoob doesn't either. Go in my box. It's in the cabinet above the kitchenette sink. Hand me the radio that's in there. Okay. Scoob gets out of the seat to do what she asked, though what G-Ma could need an old radio for, he's not sure. There's no way of actually knowing if it works. He's quick to hand it over when he gets back into the cab, though, because what little color G-Ma has disappeared from her face like she's seeing something Scoob can't at the house with no front door. A ghost? G-Ma, are you okay? She doesn't answer. She just unscrews what Scoob assumed was an antenna to reveal a clear spout, which she then puts to her mouth before turning the radio upside down to drink from it. Woo, she says after a few good gulps. She squeezes her eyes shut and her head and shoulders and quiver. Forgot how much that burns. Burns? Scoob's known G-Ma going on 12 years and has never seen her drink anything other than water and unsweet tea with a quarter lemon squeezed over the top. There's no way she's drinking. G-Ma, is that alcohol? Bourbon, your G-Pop's favorite. Scoob was dumbfounded. And this was his flask, she continues, holding the radio. Wait! But Scoob's got so many questions. He's not sure which one to ask first. What's a flask? Why is that one shaped like a radio? Since when does G-Ma drink? The thing he says is, what you just drank was 50 years old? She bursts out laughing and doesn't stop. For like 2 minutes solid, Scoob literally watches the clock. At least the color returns to her face, though. The tears leaking from her eyes are running down her very pink cheeks now. She eventually takes a breath. Good Lord, haven't laughed like that in years, and boy, did I need it. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for being here and being you. I'm William, G-Ma. Scoob mumbles. I just can't believe we're here. I'm here. The house right there. After all these years. And now Scoob really can't take any more. G-Ma, I don't mean to be rude, but what is here? What is that house? Why are we here? Why are we in front of it? That house is a piece of history, Scoob-a-Doob. So she does remember who he is. It was built to house Medgar Evers' family. Medgar was known for helping black folks get registered to vote back in the day. Also drew national attention to the horrible crime committed against the Till boy, Emmett. He was killed just a few hours north of here. Now she's got Scoob's attention. He knows all about Emmett Till because Dad gave him a lecture after the academic defraudment scandal. Said as a black boy, even if Scoob claims he's not doing anything wrong, the moment someone white says he is, he's in trouble. He used Emmett Till as an example, and despite the fact that it happened a long time ago, the story shook Scoob down to his bones, especially when Dad told him Emmett really hadn't done anything wrong. And the men who did the true wrongdoing, his killers, got off scot-free. Medgar was shot down dead right there in the driveway, G-Ma says, shoving Scoob out of his musings with so much force, his head swims. Huh? House has no front door because the family thought it'd be safer if the entrance was in the carport, but that didn't protect Medgar. He was shot as he got out of his car. What? And it took 30 years for the man who did it to see any jail time. Scoob was speechless. I wanted to come here before, Gma continues. I knew he'd be passing through, had it circled on my map before we started the trip. Jimmy and I were together when we heard about Medgar's murder, and it hit me how much danger your G-Pop was in by existing. It's the moment I knew I wanted to marry him. Scoop just shakes his head. He feels like he's getting punched from multiple angles. Can't figure out where to block. Then her chin gets to trembling. It's my fault, she says as tears begin to roll. She stretches the alcoholic radio out and he takes it, shoves it in the glove box. She keeps going. I was driving and determined to have my way, even though Jimmy said coming down here would be a bad omen. He'd fallen asleep, so I went ahead and took the exit. Didn't get a quarter of a mile before a highway patrol car pulled me over. She shakes her head. I remember it like it was yesterday. Jimmy piped up to ask him why we were stopping. I yelled at him to hush and stay hidden. I knew if those officers saw him with me, they'd come up with a reason to cart him off to jail. The sun was starting to dip in the sky. I'll never forget because as the officer stepped into the RV, there was one on each side. I wondered if it was the last sunset I'd ever see with your G-Pop. Scoop swallows hard. Was this a sundown town? He'd seen the term in the Green Book and knew it referred to places where black people could be killed just for being there after dark and no one would bat an eyelash. I'm not entirely sure, but it's likely. Man, I hate this world sometimes. It's his first time ever expressing that out loud. Me too, Scuba-Doob. Those officers started asking me questions and I could tell they were suspicious. Jimmy wasn't the only contraband I had on board. Contraband? They let us go, but I was real shaken up. To this day, I feel like all that terrible stuff that came after was because of me. If I hadn't taken that exit, we'd never gotten pulled over. I wouldn't have been in such a terrible state. We wouldn't have had to turn around. I'd be fine, Jimmy. We'd make it. Scoop's too nervous to correct her this time. He does think they should get away from here, though. We should go, Gma, he says. His eyes latch onto the glove box where the radio is sitting like a bourbon-filled brick. Stuff doesn't even sound tasty. Are you okay to drive? Because he obviously can't. She stares at the Evers house. Scoop's not even sure she heard him. Gma? Fine, we're going. She puts the RV in gear, jerks it forward, making Scoop's stomach somersault in his throat. Between everything she told him and her white knuckles on the wheel, Scoop wonders if G-Pop was right. Maybe coming here was a bad omen. When we return next time, we're heading even further into the deep south and stopping in Louisiana. I'll see you then.